Yo, what's up YouTube? I just wanted to make a quick video for you guys today. Sorry it's been so long since I've uploaded, I just haven't had a lot of motivation. But I just wanted to do one, I know like this game can be like kind of expensive and daunting with like, it seems like you have to spend a lot of crystals to get some like good cards and things like that, and which it's true. If you'll notice, I don't even own all these that I'm about to show you guys because I have some of the UR cards that I would play instead, or just slightly better UR cards. But that being said, every card that I'm going to show you in this video today is going to be an SR card that you can craft that can take the place of other UR cards or just really good generic staple cards that almost any deck can play. There's a few caveats in here but I included them regardless because they're so good. So yeah, let me go over these with you guys, and thanks so much for all the views on all my other videos and stuff like that. I really appreciate it. All right, let's get into it. So we're gonna start off at number 10. I chose Antispell Fragrance. It's kind of a degenerate card, if I'm being honest. But that being said, decks that can play this card can really take advantage of it. So basically both players must set spell cards before activating them and cannot activate them the turn and they can't activate them until the next turn, basically. So like you have to set a card before you can activate it. Pretty straightforward. Really good card. Not a whole lot of decks can make use of this, but ones that can, it can be a really big blowout against certain meta decks and stuff like that. So it's a really good card to consider if you're playing like an anti-meta or like a deck that doesn't run a lot of spell cards or something like that. For number 9, we have Solemn Warning. Basically it just says when a monster would be summoned or when a spell, trap, cord, or monster effect is activated that includes an effect that special summons a monster, pay 2,000, negate that summon or activation, and then destroy it. So it's a really good card if you're playing a back row deck or a deck that plays a lot of traps. Definitely consider running some of these as because they're a cheaper alternative to like other you know, UR solemn cards and stuff like that. It's still really good. You can stop a lot of good plays with that. So for number 8, we have Pot of Prosperity. So I'm including Pot of Prosperity and not Pot of Desires. Desires is good. They just recently hit Pot of Desires in the TCG, which by no means like means that they're gonna do that on Master Duel, but it is kind of a possibility, I guess. I don't know. I feel like Prosperity has less of a chance of getting hit than Desires, so I included Prosperity instead. So basically what it does is you can banish 3 or 6 cards, your choice, from your extra deck face down, and then for the rest of his turn, after this card resolves, any damage your opponent takes is halved. And then also activate cards from the top of your deck equal to the number of cards banished. Add 1 activated card to your hand. Place the rest on the bottom of your deck in any order. So basically, like, if you're playing a deck where you really need to see a certain card, you can play this, and you know, if you don't need your entire extra deck, like there's basically 2 stipulations for this card, right? You need to have an extra deck that's not like super jam-packed full where you don't need every single monster in it. And then number 2, well, I mean, shit, I guess that's kind of it, really. It doesn't really matter as long as you're not trying to OTK your opponent. Other than that, that's really the only stipulation. Just go 6 cards deep, grab the card you need. Yeah, pretty good card. Okay, so let's move on. Number 7, I put Twin Twisters. This card's really good. It's kind of hard to fit this in with the discard 1 cost, but I mean, it's a, you know, 1-for-1 trade basically. You pop 2, you activate a card, discard 1, so you lose 2. So I mean, if you're playing a back row heavy deck and there is a lot of Eldritch and stuff like that, granted this card isn't super good against Eldritch because they can still activate their graveyard effects, but if you do set this and hit their cards on the end phase, they are going to get a lot less value out of their cards, so it's still pretty good. But overall, just against a regular back row deck that's just playing a bunch of traps, this card's fantastic. So I think this is worth mentioning. Okay. For number 6, we have Forbidden Lance. This one, I feel like not a ton of people know about. I don't see it a lot. I guess you could argue this could be lower, but I also think this card is really invaluable if you're using it correctly. So basically, if you have if you're playing a deck where you rely on setting up a certain board, or like you have a monster that you don't want to get board wipe, I don't know, if you just don't want to get sacked by like Raigeki or something, or if you just, it's really necessary to keep a monster on board, really good card to play, because this last part, it's unaffected by the effects of other spells and traps. It loses 800 attack, but like if your opponent activates Raigeki and then you chain this and your monster stays, and you know, it's still good, because a lot of the times if you're setting up a turn 1 board, you're going to summon your monsters in defense anyway. So yeah, this is a really good card. I'd highly recommend playing Forbidden Lance. For number 5, Duel and Lockbird. This part of the list is where you could kind of change things around just depending on the meta. Is going to be how useful these last 5 cards are. But Duel and Lockbird has always been a really good card. It stops a lot of things. It can totally shut down a lot of meta decks' entire turn, because they rely so much on adding cards to their hand. Basically what it is when your opponent activates effect that adds a card from the main deck to their hand, you can send this card from your hand to the graveyard like a normal hand trap, and for the rest of the turn they cannot add cards from their deck to their hand. So they'll get that first initial add, but after that they really can't do much else unless they're able to, you know, like special summon from deck and stuff like that. But don't count this card out. It's really good. Duel and Lock is a really good card. For number 4, we have psy-frame Gear Gamma. This probably would be number 1 if it wasn't for the fact that it's limited to 2, which really kind of hurts the consistency of it. But that being said, this card is so good. Basically, just when they activate a monster effect, you can special summon this card and a psy-frame driver from your hand, deck, or graveyard. So basically, you have to have a driver in your deck, which is kind of meh, but the value you get from the effect is so good that it doesn't really matter. You can just negate the activation of a monster effect and destroy it. And this is really good because it stops hand traps. It stops like problematic like monsters on your opponent's turn. Yeah, it's just really good, man. Highly recommend this card. Alright, so number 3, we have Artifact Lancia. This card is insane. It's very meta dependent. If you're playing against a deck that has to rely on banishing cards, this is a total blowout. But in case you don't know what it does, during your opponent's turn, if the actually wrong one, hang on. During your opponent's turn, quick effect, you can tribute this card from your hand or face up field. Neither player can banish cards for the rest of this turn. So if you time this card correctly when your opponent is trying to banish something, or like if you, I mean, you can even kind of just shotgun this card against certain decks, like just standby phase, tribute it from your hand or whatever, and they can't banish. So it's kind of hard to make an argument for this card in Master Duel because there's no siding. But if you are noticing that you're playing against a lot of decks that use banishing effects, try throwing 3 of these in for some SR points and, you know, see what happens. So for number 2, Cosmic Cyclone. This card probably could be number 1 spot. Just pay 1,000 life points, target 1 spell trap in the field, banish it. This stops so many things. It's super good against Eldritch. It's really good. You could like banish your, like if you're playing against like somebody using Alistair, you could banish Invocation. You can banish any problematic floodgate spell or traps. Like this card is so good. Like this is probably the best spell and trap removal like ever. So good. Okay, but I highly recommend this card. I highly recommend. Like it has been invaluable to me for like beating Eldritch and stuff. And then for number 1, probably no surprise to a lot of people, DD Crow. You can discard this card to the graveyard, then target 1 card in your opponent's graveyard, banish that target. To a newer player, this might sound underwhelming, but there are a lot of effects. Like 90% of like meta decks or just decks in general are gonna have effects where they have to target something in the graveyard to either special summon it or return it to the deck to get an effect or like banish it or something. What you can do is when they activate an effect where they're gonna basically target a card in their graveyard, you can chain this card, target that same card, banish it, and make their effect fizzle. Like DD Crow is so good. It's always been good. It's a really old card. but it has really stood the test of time. So yeah, that's about it for this video. I hope that helped you guys out a little bit. I know this game seems like it can be kind of expensive with all the URs you need sometimes, but definitely, like, if there is a card that's a UR that you really like want to use or you feel like you need, do some research. There's probably a card that's cheaper that kind of does the same thing more or less. But yeah, and then also as I'm making this video, there are tons of SR cards that are really good. Like I'm looking at one right now, like you have E-Telly. The only reason cards like this aren't on this list is because I tried to keep it kind of as generic as possible. Like these are kind of like 10 cards that you could kind of just, you could craft all of these and they could go into a various amount of decks, right? Something like E-Telly can't really go in any deck, but still a really, really good card to keep in mind if you're ever going to play like a psychic, you know, deck that uses level 3 or lower psychics. Really, really good card. But yeah, that's about it for this video. Sorry to keep rambling. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm going to be trying to do some more like higher end content soon when I get the motivation. But for now, I'm just kind of aiming this channel and helping out people that want to get better at Master Duel or get better at Yu-Gi-Oh! And I might end up doing some like in real life Yu-Gi-Oh! Content. If you guys have any interest in all in seeing that, let me know in the comment section below. But other than that, thanks so much for watching. Drop a like and a comment. Comment like some staple cards that you think are really, really good that I may have missed here. Yeah, just let me know. Thank you guys so much. See ya.